Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of As Goes Wisconsin. I am your host, Kristen Bry. We got Greg Bach on the board. And a couple weeks ago now, I think it was earlier in August, we'll say, I came across this headline. Wisconsin preschoolers are 5 times more likely to be expelled than K through 12 students. And when you think of little baby children being expelled, it's a kind of a weird thing to wrap your head around. And so I wanted to reach out to the reporters of the story, Natalie Eilbert and Madison Lammert, to come on the show and talk about what they found, because it was a fascinating story. But I also think that the consequences of having kids be expelled this early and digging into that with them as well was important. So Natalie Eilbert, welcome back to the show. She is a mental health reporter for USA Today Network, Central Wisconsin. And Madison Lammert is a Report for America Corps member based in Appleton Post Crescent. She covers childcare and early education across the state. And I'm so excited to talk to this about you. Who found the story too that you guys ended up working on this together?
That'd be you, Maddie.
Yeah, I think it was just something that I heard about somewhat relatively quickly when I started covering this topic of early childhood education. And it just really surprised me because I never thought of little children as being expelled.
Yeah, that would have been my assumption too, is that little kids are little kids, but it also makes sense as far as an already tight, stressed childcare system having the bandwidth to deal with a variety of behaviors. And so I guess as you start to dig into this, what is behind that stat as far as 5 times more likely? Like where did you start to dig into this?
Well, I think we that was exactly it. We thought, well, why is this happening? And that's really where we started. So we talked to, I know Natalie and I think it was back in January, right, Natalie? We had our first interview with some of the providers that actually brought it to my attention. And, just kind of started following the little breadcrumbs from there. So, yeah, I think it comes down to, and Natalie, feel free to jump in if I'm forgetting anything, but I think it really comes down to that workforce being stressed, the fact that kids, when they're this little, they don't really have like a protected right to education, if that makes sense, because they don't have to mandatorily be in school until they're 6 years old in Wisconsin. So there's really no like legal recourse or anything when you expel a kid that young. And then just the fact, children are so tiny and they don't know how to channel their emotions yet. So that comes out in behavior. And then when you put the pandemic on top of it, that just really, it's a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm. And just going into that a little more on the behavioral health side, little babies haven't yet figured out emotional regulation yet. That only really comes with some skill sets. During the pandemic, when kids would be upset, a lot of times parents were working from home and they would just like hand them a screen and say, deal with this. I need to get to work. So kids learned to self-regulate by like moving little symbols on a glowing screen. When they were then moved to a physical childcare facility, there was no screen. And so they were left to their devices, which, their tools were very, very anemic. And then teachers don't have behavioral health training formally. A lot of early childhood education teachers have basic training for taking care of kids, but they don't have behavioral health training necessarily. Some do, but a lot do not go through rigorous training of how to kind of build up those relationships and tools to help help emotionally dysregulated kids get back to calm.
And so, because what was interesting is one of the stats that you listed in you both listed in the article was that even back in 2005, a nationwide study found that children in state-funded pre-kindergarten programs were 3 times more likely to be expelled than students in K through 12 schools. And so this isn't necessarily the disproportion between kindergarten and preschool expulsions and K through 12 is not necessarily new, but it has accelerated because of COVID. Is that a fair way to frame it?
There's actually not data on that yet. I know one of the main researchers, we should say, behind all this, Dr. Walter Gilliam, he is currently working on that, I believe. And I believe, Natalie, didn't he say it would come out in the fall? I don't want to get it wrong, but
yeah, I don't know if
work on it more in the fall.
Yeah, I don't know if he's completing the research by then or if it's publishing in the fall, but there is work to collect all of that data, and it is quite athletic to collect data from across all these different schools, childcare centers across the country.
And so when it comes to the kids who this is affecting the most, I feel like there was two different things I picked up on from the article. There is students who are, potentially on the autism scale, actually are diagnosed with some kind of developmental delay. And then there's also, unfortunately, Black boys this is also disproportionately affecting. And so do you see an overlap there? Or are those two kind of distinct groups and different reasons why these are kind of the groups that are getting, it's so weird to say expelled. Like that feels like such a harsh word when we're talking about like 3 to 5 year olds, but expelled.
Maddie, do you want to take the reason behind the Black boys? I feel like you got a really good handle on that.
Sure. Well, yeah. It's kind of just like not surprising, right? Because this is how the world works, unfortunately. But when looking into it, we found that they were expelled basically at disproportionately high rates compared to their population. And then there were like two subcategories within that. There was the gender category, and then there was the category of Black children being expelled more frequently. So if you're a young Black if you're a young Black boy, your chances aren't looking too great, right? So, but some of the reasoning behind that is something Dr. Gilliam kind of looked into on, like, could this possibly be because of implicit bias? And he found, it's hard to concretely say yes or no, but he found evidence suggesting it was. So basically, around 2016, they did an eye tracking study, and they basically set up like 4 different frames, 4 different children, I should say, in a room playing. And they said, indicate when a sign of challenging behaviors might come up. And so basically they found that the early care educators that they were having participate in the study said, we do feel like we need to watch boys more frequently. But with the eye tracking technology they used, they found they actually watch Black boys in particularly more, indicating that they were more likely. I mean, if you watch a child more closely, you're more likely to see a quote unquote problem with their behavior. So it's like expecting these particular children are going to misbehave. And then, it's like, well, if you expect them to misbehave, you're more likely to catch them doing so.
And the thing about that study, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the thing about that study is it was four children who are professional actors. And, there were 2 boys, 1 white, 1 Black, 2 girls, 1 white, 1 Black. And they were explicitly told to behave well. So they were not behaving poorly at all. They were behaving on their best. And yet eye tracking was just watching for those bad behaviors in the Black boys. So that's one thing. And then the other thing about the question of neurodiverse children, that is, it's so upsetting because, there's something like less than, they make up less than a quarter of attendance at these schools, and yet they're expelled at like 60% of the time. And a lot of that, again, it comes down to training. Like, how do you work with kids who don't have those neurotypical developmental stages? The impulse is, unfortunately, to remove those kids from the classroom. And what study after study finds is that removing kids from classrooms who are disruptive actually impacts them in vastly negative ways. They don't get to learn from their classmates. Their classmates don't get to learn from them. Their classmates get messages like these are kids that
need to be removed.
And so on either end, you get these learned biases about what a kid represents, and that kid internalizes, that they're bad or that they're different in a bad way. So, the thing that we just kept coming back to is segregating kids, if they're bad, is the worst thing you can do, because those are the kids who need it the most. They need integration the most, and they need care the most.
We're talking to Natalie Eilbert and Madison Lammert, who are both reporters for USA Today Network, based out of central Wisconsin and Appleton Post Crescent, about their story about Wisconsin preschoolers are 5 times more likely to be expelled than K through 12 students. When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about the ramifications of this reality, both for the students themselves as they age through schooling, for the families that then have to find childcare again or drop out of the workforce. And also, in your reporting, did you find any solutions and any hope, optimism, et cetera? Because we always like to at least end on a high note. So we'll get to all of that when we come back. Stick around for more As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. Greg Bach is on the board, and we are talking to Natalie Eilbert, who is a mental health reporter for USA Today Network Central Wisconsin, and Madison Lammert, who is a Report for America Corps member based at the Appleton Post Crescent. And we're talking about their story that was published earlier this month about preschoolers and how much more they are being expelled than K through 12 students. And so the big reason, I think, as we discussed, of why this can happen is not dissimilar to why I think last month we heard that disabled students at a higher rate can get expelled from private schools, even though private schools are taking vouchers. Is that there is a different set of rules for some of these institutions as far as daycare and pre-K that don't have to keep you in school as much. Is a fair way to kind of sum it up of why this is happening, why this can happen more at younger ages?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Straightforward. Yes, that is it. and so, but what I got from the article is that this then sets up almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy for the kids that it's happening to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Correct.
So, and something that's in, the impact section of this piece is internalization is a hell of a drug. It's when a kid internalizes the idea that they're bad, they act out. The impact is that their studies are worse off. Like they have 10 times, they're 10 times, if a kid is expelled in preschool, they're 10 times likelier to be expelled in high school. They're 8 times likelier to end up in a correctional facility of some kind, junior or adult. So, and I think, Maddie, you can talk a little bit more about those repercussions. But a lot of this, we didn't really talk about why kids are expelled. And the number one reason, at least in Wisconsin, is aggressive behavior. That's, biting, hitting, temper tantrums. These are very normal things that 3 to 5 year olds do. But a lot of times parents don't want their kids being bit and hit and struck by other kiddos, which makes sense. But it's still, it puts the teacher in a really uncomfortable and precarious situation.
Well, and it also sounds like there's not really an option once this happens to a family. I mean, we've talked about it tons on this show. Maddie, I obviously know that this is something that you cover extensively as far as our childcare shortage, and already families struggling to be on waiting lists and get into childcare. But the added pressure than if you have a child who's been kicked out of a childcare, daycare, pre-K school. What even options is there any other option for you then? Are you just like forced out of the workforce?
Yeah, you basically, I mean, we talked to one person who had about a week once she saw the notification that her child was being expelled to find alternate care. I think a lot of people, and I think this is just something I see in my reporting across the board, we are.
Uh-oh.
I think we got Maddie. Maddie, are you frozen or are you coming back?
Oh, am I frozen?
There we go. We got you. We got you back.
Oh, I don't know. How much of that tangent did you hear?
Start over.
Okay. Yeah, I think to answer your question of what do families do, I think they're scrambling to find care, and ultimately it might mean changing around their job, picking up different shifts. I know a lot of them rely on friends and family, but the sad part of it is, these kids, like Natalie had said, are the ones that need that consistent, reliable care the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're taking them out of their environment, they're being expelled, right? And then they're having to be thrust into a new environment, whatever it is. And that is change is hard on us adults. Imagine what it's like for a child, especially when you're being told you are getting kicked out of school because you're bad. And then it's just all of this reporting kind of wraps into one big giant ball of like depressingness.
So fun. Well, let's we have about 2 minutes left. So to not end on the depressingness, you both are still working on, it hasn't come out yet, but as far as some of the solutions and how this problem could be approached. And so what are some of the things you can tease us with until the actual article comes out?
Yeah, you go.
I think the cool thing about it is we found solutions on a lot of this work is preventative that we're finding, which is really interesting. And we find it on kind of like a broad scale of like just social emotional learning curriculums that a lot of places are using to teach kids those basic regulatory skills so that hopefully they don't get to the points where they are so dysregulated that they become aggressive and then they feel the need to expel them. And then we see a number of programs that are kind of taking it into their own hands and making their own supports for these families, which is also really neat. And then there are some statewide efforts as well that we'll be covering.
Something that I think just concretely is, we've kind of thought about this as, providers as like detectives trying to figure out what's leading to this. So if a kid is like angry at 10 a.m., well, what's their morning routine? Are they getting breakfast? If you can just shift your schedule 15 minutes, maybe they won't become hangry. And so there's like simple solutions, and then there's more complex solutions if kids have trauma in their background. And that's something we're definitely going to get into. Like, how can a therapist work with a family to get those supports in place?
Absolutely. All right. Well, unfortunately, we have to let you go, but I'm looking forward to your further reporting on this. Natalie Eilbert is a mental health reporter for USA Today Network, Central Wisconsin, and Maddie Lammert. Looking forward to your further reporting on this. Natalie.
Time keeps on slipping into the future.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. He is Greg Bach. And would you pay more to sit away from kids on a plane? 844-967-2789. There's already so many different upcharges when you fly. Do you want more legroom? There'll be an extra $75. Do you want a carry-on bag? Depending on the airline, that will be an extra $75. Do you want a checker bag? That will be another $100, please. Would you like, you used to actually, I saw something yesterday of like an old school training video for flight attendants. And the acting was actually really good. They were having some tiff. I was like, what is happening here? But there was like an actual wooden salad bowl in the back, like in the flight attendant station for this training video. Like they were like literally tossing a salad to be able to serve to passengers. And so it's like flying used to be different, and now it is at least in commercial is not as great, but it's not luxury. But for travelers who want to avoid babies and kids, one airline will test an adults only section. And I am wondering, how much would you be willing to pay to know that for sure you would not be bothered by a crying baby or a demonic child for your flight? 844-967-2789. What do you think, Greg?
I feel like if flying was still an affordable thing to do, I'd pay a little bit more and treat myself. But I feel like just the basic flying nowadays is so expensive. I'd be like, I can't afford to not have a child kicking the back of my chair.
Yeah, you're like, well, I'm just happy to be on here.
Exactly. Like as soon as you were saying all those different add-ons, my first thought goes to like a sketch saying, you have a ticket. It's like, would you like to actually fly in the plane today? That'll be a $75 upcharge. But I have a ticket. Oh, I know, but you have to pay extra if you actually want to get on the plane. Yeah, that's a bonus. Yeah, I if it was an affordable thing, totally, I would treat myself if it was, but it's so expensive now, I can't afford it.
I know.
If I was rich, I'd have my own plane.
So I guess in the hypothetical that you could afford it, I guess that's hard to say. How much would you pay? Like, would it be like a $75? Like, what is it worth to you to be able to, and how long does the flight be? Because I feel like on a 2-hour flight, like a crying baby on a 2-hour flight, like I can suck it up. A crying baby on like a flight to Europe is a harder pill to swallow.
I have much more tolerance for a crying baby because I know the baby can't control it. The mom can't, the dad can't control it. So I just put my earbuds in, I go to sleep, or I just try to ignore it. But here's the question, Kristen. You can go ahead and give me a good flight without the children. Can you guarantee that the adults won't be idiots? How much do I have to pay to be on a cool people's flight?
Well, did you have anyone? Because I know Jane was worried about that when she was ahead of her flight, because she went on Jane is on vacation, but she's out, and so she was worried about having to fly with idiots. And I was like, well, you haven't flown that much. I was like, in the flights that I've taken since COVID, when like those stories make national news of some sphincter being a sphincter on the airlines, I've had that maybe once where there was a fight on the plane, and it wasn't even a physical fight, it was just yelling. Did you, when you flew recently, was everyone well behaved?
Everyone was well behaved because they canceled the flight, so we were all kind of in it together. And like we didn't fly anywhere. We were on the plane for 40 minutes. They brought us right back, and we were all just equally mad at the airline. So I've never had a problem with the people. When I flew to England once, and I think this is where it comes from, my attitude towards babies. There was a woman, she had a baby, the baby was just screaming and crying, and the woman next to her kind of gave her a look of like, are you gonna do something about like of annoyance? And I'll never forget this, the way the woman just turned around, looked down at this woman, because she was standing up with her child. She looked down at her as if to say, what on earth do you expect me to do with this right now? Like, do you think I like this? Do you think I want this? And you're going to give me attitude? And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to be cool from now on. I've never seen a fight, but that was the coolest thing I've ever seen on a flight, period. That was amazing. Shout out to that woman and her baby, who's now like 12.
So the question is, we would love to hear from you. Would you pay more to sit away from babies and kids on an airline and on a flight? And if so, how much is it worth to you? Because Corendon Airlines says that it will sell an adults only zone, no one under 16, on flights between Amsterdam and Curacao, which is where I went for my honeymoon, which is a very popular flight. There's a lot of Dutch people in Curacao, starting in November. So the Turkish carrier says people traveling without children will get quiet surroundings, and parents won't have to worry that their crying or fidgeting kids will annoy fellow passengers. I think that's as much of an advantage for the parents who feel guilty about their kids' behavior, like to keep them also separate from people who may be a jerk about it. But the airline announced last week that it will set aside 93 regular seats and 9 extra legroom seats in the adult zone in the front of its Airbus A350 jets, which will have 432 seats in all. A wall or curtain will separate the section from the wailing masses farther back. So I guess my question is, would you pay to be part of that, part of the group that is on either side? Because I think also there's like an advantage if you knew that you were flying on an like a plane with your kids, and there were certain flights where, like, would that make a difference? If you know that there was a certain flight where, like, you're like, oh, we're in the kids section, that's fine, we can accept that. We don't worry about, because I'm already thinking about that. Like the first time that we take our kid on a plane, like, do you be the family that like brings the little notes and like the little, like, I've seen these like ideas go viral before of like you make little like Ziploc baggy packages for the people sitting around you being like, I'm so sorry, this is her first flight, like please be understanding, and like get ahead of it. And so I'm of course I'm already thinking about that. But yeah, so would you pay more to sit away from kids on an air flight? Or maybe even in restaurants. I don't know. 844-967-2789. We're going to go to the phones.
Cindy from Appleton, what's up?
Well, you probably won't like me, but I'm thinking, why should people that don't have kids get penalized? The ones that are bringing the kids on board that are making all the noise and creating the nuisance, why aren't they the ones being penalized?
Well, are they already being penalized? I mean, I guess they're already paying for an extra 1 to 2 tickets, right? As far as how, I guess if they're sitting in your lap, you don't have to pay for a ticket for them. But is it penalized, or is it a having a feature of? It's like, is it seen as extra leg
Well,
room?
if you have to pay a fee for something, that's being penalized as far as I'm concerned. It's just like when you go to a hotel with a group and you're a single person, and the double people with the double room get a whole lot cheaper room than the single person does. Why is that? I use less water, I use less towels, I use less everything, and I get penalized for being a single person. It's the same thing. If you're going to bring a kid on board, then you should have to pay extra if your kid gets out of hand.
So, that's an interesting. So you think when you book a hotel room, you should be charged not only for the room itself, but how many people are staying in the room?
Well, no, that's how it is. You know, it seems like the more people in the room, the less it costs, and the less people in the room, the more expensive it is. That makes no sense to me because, like I said, I use less water. I don't flush the toilet as much. I don't use as many towels, but yet I pay double what most people do that are, you know, like paying for a double room, and there's 2 of them, and I just don't understand that. So to me, it's like, you know, make the playing field more equal.
All right. Good. So you think they should be the opposite, that you have to pay extra to even bring your kids on the plane.
Yep.
That's an interesting. Do you have kids, Cindy? Nope. Thanks so much for the call. Hey, there you go. You sound like Jane a little bit. Thanks so much for the call, Cindy. We got Price from Texas.
Actually, before we do that, Karina called in and left a message. She said she'd sooner pay to sit away from children than she would for baggage any day of the week.
She'd rather pay to not have to sit next to a kid than have to pay for baggage.
Yep.
All right, there you go.
So yeah, we got a Price from Texas. Price, what say you?
I guess I'm opposite. I don't mind. The older I get, the more I like little kids. I guess it's because I'm an older parent and it just took me a while to get more used to it. But if I sit next to a little kid, that helps me get, sometimes if he or she, if they're a little, you know, active and they're looking at stuff, I'll mug at the kid and I'll make faces and smile and talk to the mom and stuff. And I don't mind, because just like the ladies before were saying, kids don't have executive function. It's a new thing for a lot of times. Yeah. And you don't know what the parent's going through. I have a friend who is literally escaping an abusive marriage with and she had to take her two or three, I can't remember, kids on a plane, and the kids were fussing. One of them barked all over a lady next to her. And I mean, and she was just in tears and she couldn't handle it. And the lady next to her, she said, was an absolute angel. So I think you don't know what other people are going through with that. And I would honestly sit next to a fussy kid rather than like be involved in one of these TikTok videos where like the church people just start singing hymns or the 50s all start singing on the airplane. If that happens when I'm on a plane, I might go to jail.
Or even worse, you could sit next to someone who claps when the plane lands. It's
an achievement, Kristen. It's an achievement.
I agree with you, Price. But I also really like kids.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the thing. It's like I have patience and understanding, I think, for when a kid is crying or acting out and I feel bad for the parent. And I also like engaging with kids. And not everyone, obviously Cindy, doesn't like doing that. So, but I think that gets at the heart of the question is like, would you pick an airline that gave this option of having an adult section? And I think there's clearly some people who would say yes.
Oh, of course.
When I used to not have kids, maybe, before, because I remember being in my 20s, be like, oh, shut that kid up. And now that I'm older, I'm just like, let that kid sit on my lap. I'll play with that kid while you take a nap.
Yeah.
I just like, I've mellowed a lot when it comes to kids, and I've gotten way worse when it comes to adults. So
thanks so much for the call, Price. That is funny. I'm just the who do you have more tolerance for, annoying adults or children who have not learned how to regulate themselves yet?
And that's the thing too, is I actually I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I feel the same way as Price does. I love being around kids on the plane. Like when I flew to Toronto a couple weeks ago, there was a little girl in front of me and we just kept making faces, and she would hide in her mama's arms and bring her face out, and we'd make faces and she'd laugh. And then as soon as the plane took off, she just passed out the whole flight.
Yeah. It was funny because when the last time we flew, there was two kids that were around 2 years old on the plane. One was a little girl, one was a little boy, and the little girl was just an angel the entire time. And the little boy was just a little boy. He had little boy energy. And we got off the flight and Mike was like, I'm so happy we're having a girl. He was like, she was so well behaved. And I was like, that's no guarantee that our little girl is not going to have a lot of energy. But some of the texts that we were getting on the line, which I appreciate this one from the 312. Wow, tossing a passenger salad. Now that's service.
Hey-o, come on. I wasn't going to read that one. My goodness.
If you don't know what that means, you'll have to look it up.
Chris Rock, bring the pain.
612. They already have Comfort Plus, which is largely kid-free. So that's the thing. It's like, I think, sometimes I see kids in first class. But yeah, I would say, especially when you think about a family buying multiple tickets, the sections that you're already paying more to sit in typically have less kids in them already. But
I just want more legroom, please.
You just want more legroom?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're really packing in there these days. I think they've actually proven that the incremental space with newer and newer airplanes, the space itself that you get is getting smaller. But all right, well, we're going to go to a break. If you have thoughts on this, feel free to text in 844-967-2789. Would you pay more to sit away from kids? And also, if you have any merch ideas, we'll read them after the break, and we'll talk about what's coming up at Laughing Tap this weekend. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. He is Greg Bach. And just to wrap up our conversation around, would you pay more to sit away from kids on an airplane? We got a couple texts on the text line from WAUK. It's from the 262. I don't have kids and I don't mind them at all. If they're crying on a flight, I try to help out the parents. Similar camp as us. From the 608, you got to tell hubby little girls are usually a bit more sassy when they're older and a bit more naughty when they're older. Than boys are, not even the younger. I'm a grandma now and I see the difference, and I would like to sit with kids so it wouldn't matter with me. I'd rather help someone out, but when I was younger, I would have paid probably an extra $100. That's something.
Yeah, I mean, I totally help too, but people look at me and they're like, "No, thank you." I'll hold your child.
Oh, really?
I got big arm. Oh yeah, yeah. It's a burden of being a big bearded dude. Like when you look and smile at kids, I've had parents like divert.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're so cuddly though.
They don't know, but they don't know that. They do not know that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
And one more from the 715. So much more tolerance. So, this is all caps. So much more tolerance for children than horrible adults. Cindy should have to pay extra for her ticket and give everyone headphones. So that's mean. So we don't have to hear. Yeah.
Cindy's allowed her opinion.
Cindy's totally allowed her opinion. So I feel like it's a mixed bag. But I think that's why this could work, because there's going to be some people who don't care.
Yeah.
And are totally fine and actually would, find some joy be engaging with children on an airplane. And there's some people who are like, no, absolutely. I will pay $75 to $175 to not have to deal with that, especially probably the longer the flight.
I think if it was an overnight flight, I'd pay a little more so I could sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing against the kids.
Nothing against the kids.
Nothing against kids.
Just self-preservation.
Papa Bear gotta get his snoozers.
Can you sleep on planes?
No. I can sleep if it's a long flight. Like if I'm flying like to Los Angeles, I have to take like something like a half a melatonin.
Okay.
Because I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I snore sometimes or all the times, and I don't want to be that guy. So
do you sleep? Have you been tested for sleep apnea?
Long time ago, and then I lost a bunch of weight, and they're like, "Oh, you're fine now." And then I gained a bunch of weight, and they're like, "Okay,
You may have it."
Yeah, but yeah, I'm paranoid about keeping people up.
So you're understanding and you're thoughtful
and very tired.
And that. All right. Well, thank you for weighing in on that topic. Before we run out of time for the show, let's talk about who's at the Laughing Tap this weekend, Greg.
The Laughing Tap is of Laughsters happening this weekend at the Comedy Club. Amy Miller's going to be there Friday and Saturday. 3 shows, one Friday, 2 Saturday. Tickets are available at laughingtap.com. She's amazing. She's been on Comedy Central multiple times. Absolutely wonderful comedian, up and coming. People like I had never heard of her, and people are coming up to me saying, "I can't believe you have Amy Miller." Like, me too. So we're really excited to have her. And I just want to say this too: the entire month of September is yam-packed. It's
yam-packed.
It's Smucker's yam-packed. And by the way, Orville Redenbacher was born in Brazil, Indiana.
Oh, there's a Brazil, Indiana.
There is indeed.
Didn't know that.
And so, yeah, we got tons of shows. We got some one-nighters too. Jane's Adomian next Thursday. Unfortunately, the Barron's Brothers comedy show
already sold out.
Sold out in 8 hours.
Oh my God.
We put it on sale at noon the Friday after the show, and by 8 o'clock that night, the tickets were gone. So, and that's going to be the last one for quite a while. Charlie's going on tour.
Oh,
so
yeah. What is it? The Old Fashioned Tour?
Yeah. So, but we got tons of great shows coming up. And then, of course, in October, the Comedy Festival, October the 1st through the 8th. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a really good time. Got great headliners like Kelly Ryan. We got Kyle Kinane, Todd Barry, Dave Stone. I mean, it's just the comedy is happening.
The comedy is happening. And then also, I mean, right around the corner after that, we're 6 weeks out from the Milwaukee Comedy Fest?
That's what I just said.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
I'm still reading some of the texts that are coming in from this. Do you have a clip?
No, I do not have a clip. I was not able to chop up a clip in time because she swears.
She swears a lot.
She swears enough to her, so it took a little bit longer, and I'm still, But yeah, maybe I'll tell you what. I'll have a clip for tomorrow.
Okay,
we'll play a clip tomorrow.
But
yeah, it's gonna be great. And yes, the Comedy Festival is October the 1st through the 8th. Shows every day, multiple shows on some days. mkecomedyfest.com for those tickets. Those tickets are going, by the way. People are buying them up. But if you want to go see Amy this weekend, laughingtap.com. She is incredibly funny and wonderful. Do we have more text messages?
We had a couple as far as one specifically from Lynn from Economwalk, who got to go to who had the Brewers tickets.
Yeah, Lynn.
And she got to sit in front of Dom and Steph, Dom from Devil's Advocates.
Nice.
And so she got to introduce herself to both Dom and his lovely wife, Stephanie. And she sent a picture. So we always, if you ever get to win Brewers tickets from us or any other tickets from us, we love to see pictures of you there. We loved if you ever see us in person. We love to like talk to you.
Yeah.
I had that experience last week on Fish Fry. I had someone come up and like she left me like a little note, and then she kind of like
Aw.
scuttled off. I was like, oh no, like let's talk. Let's actually like I would love to know your name.
That's true.
And so yeah, whenever I mean, I would say I think I can speak for most civic media hosts that if you ever see us in public, none of us bite.
None of us bite.
Maybe
So,
Todd Alba.
Jane may bite.
Jane may bite.
I mean, I've had people mainly from at the club come in and say like, I love listening to you guys on the show, and that means the world to me. That that one, they are patronizing the club, and two, they're listening to the show and they take the time to say hello. And
Yeah.
have people from at the brewery say the same thing. So
Yeah. So I would say never be, at least for me, never be shy about coming up and saying hi when you see me, if you see me in person, because it's a one-way thing a lot of times as far as being on the radio and be like, is this thing on? And making sure people are out there listening. But one reminder, tonight is the super blue moon.
Ooh.
It's the second super moon in a single month. We talked to Bob Bonadur, the planetarium director from Milwaukee Public Museum, about this earlier this month. But the last time a super blue moon appeared was in 2018. The next time won't be until 2037. So the best time to view the super moon in all its glory is at moonrise. We'll put a link in the show notes to see when that is where you live. But Saturn may also be visible above the moon. So look into the sky tonight. Enjoy that beautiful full moon.
I'm not
the super
gonna
blue
make
moon,
the joke.
but it will also not be blue. It's not going to be a blue moon. Not to be confused with blue moon ice cream.
You know what? This show is a lie.
And that's it. That's
Let's
our
go.
show today.
Yeah,
We're
let's
going to
go.
be back tomorrow. Public service announcement. Paul Noonan. Lots of fun stuff. This has been As Goes Wisconsin.